morning, and welcome to the season premiere of Passing Point here on ESPN Kansas City and RacinBoys. We are here every Wednesday night talking racing, not just NASCAR, but all kinds of racing. And for the next half hour, we're going to be recapping the Daytona 500. Scott Traylor is still down in Florida. He was at the race, and that was pretty exciting. We're going to get your take, Scott, on what you thought of the 500. That was one great race, wasn't it?
Well, I think so, Kirk. I sit here and I look at it, and it kind of confirms, again, what we got last year when it comes to the segments and the points for those segments and the top 10, how important they are. We know that 78 last year, he won the championship. He won the most amount of segment points throughout the season. And you could really see that in the first two segments of the Daytona 500. And I say that only because if you look at it and you go back and you look at the final segment where there wasn't those segment points involved, just the win, they raced really hard segment 1. They raced really hard segment 2. Segment 3, it was all about the win. You had to be there at the end. And what did they do? They went single file till they got down to the last 15 laps, and then they started racing for it. So, again, putting the period on how important these segment points are to these teams and these drivers and how they're going to approach them in 2018. Secondly, I think the biggest story, and I think it makes a lot of people happy, Kirk, that the number 3 was back in victory lane 20 years after Dale Earnhardt Sr. picked up his Daytona 500 win.
Yeah, it's a great story. We're going to be hearing from Austin Dillon and Richard Childress about the meaning of that 3 winning. And I don't know how you came down on this, but the way I looked at it with all the blocking that went on during this, not just that race, but also the Xfinity race on Saturday, this was I just didn't see anything controversial about this finish at all. I mean, when you see Eric Almirola dive back up in front of Austin Dillon right there, you're taking a chance. And he didn't complain about it after the race. So you kind of hate to see somebody get turned around, to have the finish like that. But, hey, that's what racing is, isn't it? I mean, if you block somebody, that's on you if you get turned around.
Well, there's a couple ways. I mean, if you're the one pitching or if you're the one catching, it just depends on which end of the equation you are. And quite honestly, Austin Dillon, it's the final lap of the Daytona 500. He's driving the 3 cars 20 years after Dale Earnhardt Sr. picked up the win. You want to win it in the worst way. You've only won one race. You won the Coke 600 last year. You're looking for your second win, the biggest race of the season. Sure, if somebody comes up there in front and throws a block on you, you that happens. You might get dumped. But at the same time, we saw more blocks in the Daytona 500, as you mentioned, in the Xfinity race, people just blocking right and left like I've never seen before. And when you throw a block on somebody, you got to anticipate that you might get dumped, and that's exactly what happened there at the end of that race. And I think, Eric Almirola, he wanted to win that race in the worst way. Listen, he was in a car that has been driven by a lady that hasn't won a race for 3 or 4 years. He was about to win the very first race in that 10 car for that team, Stewart-Haas Racing. It was very important to him. It was very important to that team who had struggled here for the last couple of years. But I believe if you block, you should get what was given to you, and I think that's exactly what Austin Dillon did. Now, could Austin Dillon have let him go? Yeah, he probably could have. He probably could have made a move, but it probably would have cost him the race. And in the end, if he tries to make a move to where he doesn't run into Darrell Wallace, Denny Hamlin might go on to win because he's got Joey Logano behind him, pushing him. We might see Denny Hamlin in victory lane if Austin Dillon tries to throw a block on Eric Almirola and Darrell Wallace. Who knows? Darrell Wallace might have won that race, too. Bubba Wallace might have won that race as well. I mean, Austin and Eric Almirola start racing each other. That opens up the opportunity for Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano, even Chris Buescher with Trent Owens as the crew chief had a chance there at the end of that race.
Yeah, nobody was thinking about the 3-car Austin Dillon winning that race. I didn't consider him a favorite to win that race. Should we have considered him? I guess he had about as good a chance as anybody else winning that race. He was in the right place at the right time. When they came in to pit, he pitted with 3 other drivers, And then when the 24 car had its wreck, that would be William Byron, then that set himself back up to give himself a chance. So luck really played in a lot of ways who was going to be in position to win this thing.
Well, Kirk, I concur with you on that. I mean, if you're in the top 10 with a couple laps to go, you have a chance to win. It's all about putting yourself into position to win at the end of these races. And if you're in the top 10 at a plate track, you know that you can pass 5, 6, 10 cars, even 17, like Dale Earnhardt did in 2000 when he won at Talladega. It can be done. Does it happen all the time? No. I think in today's world, the way we look at it is the leader has the advantage. It used to be that the guys behind the leader always had the advantage, but we've seen it over the course of the last 4 or 5 years where it seems like the leader has the advantage going into that last lap. But, again, that's why they run the races, isn't it?
It is. And if you're Eric Almirola, you're thinking, where are my teammates? Well, Kevin Harvick got taken out in the same crash that Brad Keselowski did. Our two favorites to win the race got taken out in the same crash, by the way. And Boyer had a engine go bad on him. I think he was down to 7 cylinders, so he was nowhere to be found.
He ran on 7 cylinders all day, almost. Yeah. And here's the thing. Think about what Denny Hamlin did to pick up that top 3 finish that he had. You just think about that. He had his problems early on his pit stop. What's he do? He's out there. He's running by himself. He gets hooked up with the 95 and the 92 car. They run just the 3 of them by themselves and nearly get lapped towards the end of that race. Not towards the end of it, towards the end of that first segment. I mean, they're a straightaway away from getting lapped. That yellow comes out. I can't remember who it was for. It's one of the first cautions of the day. But Denny Hamlin gets a break. He's working with Casey Kane, the 92 car. They're able to stay out in front of the big lead pack, and then they get the caution. That puts him back at the end of the longest line, the leader line, and he works his way back up to a third-place finish. So Denny Hamlin, big kudos for him, for sure.
Yeah, that showed how strong his car was when he overshot his pit and had to back up. And then when they started working on the car, which is a new rule this year, you do any work on your car when the car's outside the pit box, you're going to get penalized laps. So they held him for a lap. He was able to come back from that and then had that other mistake later in the race, and still he had a chance to win that race. I mean, how strong he was of all the other Toyotas. I think by far he had the strongest Toyota car out there when you'd think they'd all be pretty much the same. He was just a cut above everybody else in the Toyota camp.
Well, I'd agree with you, Kirk. And to be honest with you, I thought there with about 2 laps to go, he was going to be the guy to beat. I thought Denny Hamlin was going to go up there and pick up the win. Now, let's go back a little bit and look at the guy that I think most of the people throughout the race thought that Ryan Blaney was going to win that race. He led the most amount of laps. Well, gosh, I don't know, 118 laps or something, 120 laps that he led?
Yeah.
I think the nearest guy to him was 20-some laps, and that was Denny Hamlin, if I'm not mistaken. So just think about that. Leading 118 laps of a race, that says that you're really dominant, especially when it comes to a plate race, Kirk. So many times we'll see, 30, 40, 50, even sometimes 60 passes for the lead. To lead 118 laps during the Daytona 500 shows you how dominant that you really were. And I thought Ryan Blaney was going to pick up the win because it didn't seem like anybody had anything for him when he was out in the lead. They couldn't make a charge. He was making the right moves. He was throwing the right blocks. And it was really working out for him there till the end of the race.
There's really nothing you can say that Ryan Blaney did anything wrong, is there? I mean, he had the lead, but when you get down to crunch time, they're going to start ganging up on you. Was there anything he could have done to help himself there? I don't think so.
Well, I mean, and again, I have to go back and think about it. But, Kirk, let's face it, man, you get down to that final segment, you're in 15 or 20 laps, and I can't remember what lap that wreck was on that he had down there. I believe it was in turn 1 and 2. Hey, anything can happen. People start pushing, shoving, beating on each other, making daring moves, throwing blocks. And as we've seen since the history of, during the history of Daytona 500, you could just be in the wrong place at the wrong time, get caught up in somebody else's mess. And that's pretty much what happened to him.
Hey, I wanted to ask you from your vantage point, sitting near the top of the grandstands up there, what did you see in this wreck where Chase Elliott, Brad Keselowski tried to come down on the inside of him? What really happened there, do you think?
I think they just ran up on Ryan Blaney and just made too big a run on him and tried to make the cut, and they just got together. I think it was totally a racing deal. I don't think there was anything more to it. You just everybody trying to move. You get a run on somebody, you close up on him, you roll up out of the gas a little bit, you get run over. I mean, we've seen it 1,000 times, right? You've got to keep that thing flat on the floor as much as you can, and if somebody's tight on your rear bumper and you roll up out of the gas because you're coming up on somebody a little too quick, you suck up on him, you roll up, the guy behind you doesn't know you're getting ready to roll up. Next thing you know, boom, he runs into the back of you and you're wrecked.
You think without the stages that we would have seen a lot of single file racing through the middle portions of that race? Did the stage points mean that much that changed the whole complexion of the race, where these guys would have been, if not for the stages, been riding single file for a lot of that race?
Absolutely 100% believe that the stage points made the difference in the excitement in stage 1 and 2. We talked about it at the open of the show, where I mentioned that, single file, as soon as segment 3 started, what did they do? Get up to the top, run single file to the last 15 laps. When it got down to crunch time, they started racing each other again. But we see again, and it's funny, we were talking about this on Facebook today on somebody's topic, that somebody was saying how these stages have ruined NASCAR. I can't even get my head around that. I don't understand how anybody could say that. You just look at those first 2 segments and how important it was for people to try to get up in the top 10 at the end of those segments. They have to put themselves in position to run in the top 10 throughout the entire segment. Towards the end of the segment, they try to put themselves in the top 10 and grab those points. And again, we go back what I said in the opening of our show here today, passing point, is that all you have to do is just take a look at that final segment. The people were just kind of riding until we got down to the end of it.
Chris Buescher had a great run, and Trent Owens, who moved over from the 43 car, is now the crew chief on that car for J.G. Doherty. He had a real shot at this thing right towards the end, didn't he?
He did, and I was so happy for Tio. He's a friend of the RacinBoys. We've known him for about 15 years now, and, man, I'm not going to lie to you, Kirk. When they had that final restart and Chris Buescher was up there in 5th place, I started rooting for a new guy. I didn't care about anybody else. I was hoping for Chris Buescher because of, obviously, personal relationships with his crew chief, Trent Owens, but just wasn't able to pull it off. But they've got to be thrilled to take that 37 car to a top 5 finish at Daytona. Again, putting themselves into position towards the end of that race, and they took advantage of it. Top 5 finish, good for them. A lot of money. Got to feel good when you come out of Daytona. You got a top 5 finish going to Atlanta. If they can back that up with a good run there, I think Trent Owens and his crew, along with driver Chris Buescher, will be really happy.
Hey, one of the telltale signs of whether or not it was a good race, an exciting race, was how many people in the grandstand stand up and for how long during that race. They've got new grandstands down there to Daytona. I'm not sure whether that makes a difference or not. But how much did the crowd stand up during that race?
Well, not as much as I witnessed in 2000 when Dale Earnhardt won that restrictor plate race down at Talladega. That's the only race that I remember in my lifetime during a Cup race where everybody stood up the entire race. It wasn't so much like that. People were pretty respectful. These grandstands, the view of them, you don't really need to stand up as much. But definitely when the restarts would happen, the start of the race, the fans would stand up for several laps. There was a lot of people very excited to watch that race. And to be straight honest with you, Kirk, that place was packed. It was sold out again. This is 2 years in a row it's been sold out. The move for getting rid of the grandstands on the back straightaway, that's a very positive move for the racetrack. Downsizing to about 100,000 people. I don't think any one of our NASCAR tracks need to be over 100,000 people. In fact, if you were to ask me, I think most of our NASCAR tracks need to be somewhere around 60 to 70,000 people, similar to what we have at Kansas Speedway, and you'd see more sellouts. I think the day of 100,000 people going to a lot of these races are behind us. So, is it wrong to have 50,000 people? Isn't it okay to have only 50,000 people at these races? I think so.
How packed? It looked like the infield was about as packed as it's been for a long time. Is that the way you saw it up there? A lot of people in the infield this year.
Like the grandstands, Kirk, the infield looked as packed as could be. And I'm encouraged that the community of Daytona is feeling the resurgence and the interest of the track there at Daytona Beach, Daytona Speedway. And I tell you why. We saw a brand new hotel being built down there. It's the Hard Rock Casino, several brand new restaurants, several of the bigger, older hotels that have been closed down with fences up around them are being re-renovated. I think there's some momentum going with the Daytona 500, and I'm sure during the 4th of July weekend it's going to be the same. I was really pleasantly surprised because if you were to ask me 2 or 3 years ago when I was down there, I would think, man, this is not looking good. A lot of the business is closing up. No new business is opening. So for what I saw down there, I'm real encouraged that Daytona Beach and the Daytona community sees that NASCAR is making a resurgence as far as that racetrack, that particular racetrack. Now, we can't say that across the board, right? We know that there's some other tracks that have some issues. But when it comes to Daytona International Speedway, I think we'll all feel positive that they're moving in the right direction. I can see it through the community as well as the racetrack and in the grandstands.
On the other side of the break, we're going to hear from the top 3 finishers, Austin Dillon, Bubba Wallace, and Denny Hamlin, as well as Richard Childress. Get some sound from the Daytona 500, the 60th annual event, as we continue to recap it here on our season opening Passing Point program. We're here every Wednesday night on ESPN Kansas City, 99.3, 1510, and RacinBoys.com. And we're brought to you by McCarthy Auto Group, where right now you can get pre-approved in just seconds at any one of the McCarthy Auto Group dealerships. So if you're worried about a credit score, don't be. Check out the great auto financing at your McCarthy Auto Group dealer, including McCarthy Chevrolet in Olathe. And even if you've already got a loan from somebody else, a bank, they can work with you to try to get that refinanced. McCarthy is still the place to do it. Go to kccars.com. When we come back, we'll talk and hear from some of the drivers that finished at the top, including Austin Dillon, the number 3, winning the Daytona 500, next on Passing Point. Welcome back. You're listening to Passing Point, season premiere. We're here every Wednesday night at 6 o'clock, and don't forget Track Talk every Saturday morning, brought to you by McCarthy Auto Group over on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Any other things that stick out in your mind from the race on Sunday, Scott?
Nope, I just feel good about where we're at in NASCAR. You know, I said it last year. I think last year was the most exciting season that we've had in a long, long time when it comes to Cup racing, and I feel the same going into this year. I feel just as positive as about this coming year that I did last year, and I'm looking forward to watching some progress. Let me tell you something. I don't know, Kirk. I know we got some sound here, but I want to say this. I heard an interview that Bubba Wallace did on satellite radio after the race, and I'm going to tell you, I became an instant fan of Bubba Wallace after this interview. He was blubbering, crying so hard that he lost control of himself. He was so thankful for the opportunity, you know, running a limited schedule yet last year, didn't know if he was going to even have a ride in NASCAR, and he gets this opportunity with the 43 car. He was fast all weekend long. I'm looking forward to watching Bubba Wallace and seeing what he can do with that car. I'm also looking forward to watching the progress of Eric Almirola. We saw that. Ryan Blaney, now that he's over at Penske. There's so many things going on in NASCAR right now that, you know, you've got the cast of characters that we all know, right? But you add in these other people. I think it's going to be a fantastic year. I'm looking forward to it. Eric Jones, he's a guy I like to keep my eye on. I think he's got some of the most talent out there. Unfortunately, he was caught up in that wreck back early in the race and wasn't able to really show what he was made of. But all in all, I think it's great, and I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to see how it goes at the 1.5 mile, the fastest 1.5 mile track on the circuit next weekend here at Atlanta. I think it's going to be great. Yeah,
all the new young drivers have definitely infused some new excitement into the sport. There's no doubt about that. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's hear from the winner, Austin Dillon. He won the Coca-Cola 600 last year, so this is his second major win. And, boy, if you're going to win races, he's won 2 of the biggest, and he takes us through the final lap on how he was able to get it done.
I don't know. I think I blacked out, and just everything just kind of kept going, and we were staying in the gas, and things were happening fast, and I kind of knew it was the checkered flag. It was green, white, checkered, so we crossed the line once, and I was like, okay, this is it right here, and got to give a shout-out to my buddy Bubba. I raced with him in Bandolero's Legends cars, and glad he's got him a good ride in the 43, and that ECR engine gave us a good push down the backstretch, and when we caught the 10, he tried to block, and I just had a lot of momentum, and last lap of the Daytona 500, you just don't lift, and actually the last couple laps, we're lucky to get through there, but man, this place is awesome. I don't know what it is about storylines in Daytona. This place just creates history, and proud to be a part of it and make some history here tonight.
And that they did. And he talks about some of the other activities out on the racetrack to put himself even in that position to have a chance to win the race.
This race, we had to start in the back, and yesterday in the Xfinity race, I kind of played the race the same way, and I always just try and give yourself a chance to win at these places. I've won 2 of them doing it, just making it through the wrecks, but you always want to stay in that lead pack for green flag stops. And we actually messed up. The 17 waved me off like he was coming to pit road, and I thought, all right, all the Fords are coming to pit road. And Houston was like, pit, pit, pit. And we pitted, and there was 4 cars. I was like, oh, no, this is not good. So we're running out there by ourselves. I'm hoping for a caution. 24 spins. All right, we're back in the race. And after that, it was, 12, 13 to go, I think, 11 maybe. And I was like, all right, it's time to go. We're 3 wide, 2 wide, and I got to run off the top. And you're making decisions really quick, and you're trying to make sure you're making the right decisions. And I went from the top to the bottom because he always talks about having a lane. And I like running the top because it seems to carry more momentum. And he's like, have a lane to get out of in case a wreck happens. And sure enough, the 41 and whoever else wrecked. And I see him coming down. I'm like, hey, I got a lane here. I'm going to be all right. And it worked out, and we're sitting 4th. And it's not going through my head like, yeah, we're going to win the Daytona 500 right here. I'm just trying not to miss a shift and do my job. You're so focused. You don't even think 600 miles, 500 miles. When we won the 600, I wasn't thinking about winning. I'm thinking about doing my job. We go through the gears. Everything's fine. The 43 is on my back bumper. Side draft the 11 tight to keep the lines even. The 10 gets out front, and we keep that line for a full lap. And the 43 gets a big run and shoves me, and the rest is kind of history after that. We got the lead and the win.
And, you see the 3 and the 43 out front, Scott. That's, a lot of people noticed that, didn't they?
Well, and I think we need to pick up on one point there. Now, remember that the 43 team has moved to Welcome, North Carolina, and is working out of a shop on the property of RCR. They are an affiliate team now. They're running Chevrolets. They ran Ford last year. They didn't feel like they were getting as much manufacturer help as they needed, so they moved to Richard Childress. They picked up the Chevrolets right out of the box. The 43 with Bubba Wallace driving it ends up with the second place finish. He pushes his team car. Hypothetically, I'm not hypothetically, but they are team cars. I mean, they have a technical alliance with each other. So it was good to have that because they've scaled back a little bit with the RCR team now, just a 2-car team, unlike when they were a 3-car team in past years. Right now, it's just Austin Dillon and Ryan Newman. So getting Bubba Wallace in there, working in the same complex, working as a teammate, that all worked out for the 3-car and took it to victory lane.
And as far as Bubba Wallace is concerned, he, gets a lot of help from the King, who is still at these races and very much part of what's going on. And Bubba talks about his second-place run.
Thanks to the King and Brian Moffitt, Andrew Murstein for giving me this opportunity and believing in me those 4 races last year. I just went out and tried not to be a hero, like the King told me right before climbing in, and I didn't try to be a hero tonight. And we're sitting here second, being able to talk to you guys about a great finish for my first Daytona 500. So, the chemistry we have with the team is. It's incredible. Drew and I just hit it off. Like when I walked into the garage at Pocono last year, it was like, boom, there it is. We have it. And before we even said anything, we knew it was something there. So we're able to build off that. And he's really good at managing races and calling races. And And, when I mess up, like sliding through the box there, he just repeats it over and over that we're fine. Just settle in, refocus, and just go out there and do what you do. And don't do it again, obviously. But just the team we have behind us right now is so much fun. And knowing that we're a smaller budget team, we have a lot of poise and a lot of attitude and just a lot of stuff to fight for this year. So I'm really looking forward to Atlanta.
And he finished second by just a matter of an inch or two, didn't he?
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, that was good stuff, man, all the way through. And the Xfinity race, by the way, the closest finish in the history of NASCAR on Saturday. It was pretty good stuff as well.
Here's the third-place finisher, Denny Hamlin, who had one of the dominant cars all day long, but he fell just behind Bubba Wallace.
Definitely put ourselves in position on the final restart. It was a debate on the radio which lane to choose. Obviously, doing this long enough that I know that it's made or break by the fifth and sixth place drivers. It's not really who's directly behind you. And I looked and felt like the 21 was probably going to be one of the best pushers. I felt like I saw how strong his car was. And so we try to get on the radio and get, the 37 behind us, the 21, to try to buy in on, whatever line gets organized the most is going to win the race. And not necessarily line, but those are the cars that's going to battle out.
And he said that the reason he was running Bubba Wallace up into the wall, he had a tire go down after Wallace got down. Did you buy that?
Oh, I don't know, Kirk. There were some words afterwards. We'll have to get into that on Saturday morning. There were some things said in that post-race press conference that we need to touch on, but we're out of time here, and but we definitely want to talk about that on Saturday morning.
All right, my friend. Have a safe drive back. We'll be here, both of us, in the studio on Saturday morning. Thanks a lot.
All right, bud. See you then.
All right, and we appreciate you tuning in. Join us next Wednesday night for another edition of Passing Point, and Saturday morning Track Talk on Sports Radio 810 at 8 o'clock. For Todd Surprise and my buddy, Scott Traylor, I'm Kirk Elliott.